if you see someone who's sweating a lot, maybe they're using their shirt to sort of wipe their brow, if you just run over and say, okay, here we go, sir, here we go, madam, here's a towel. Again, just the absolute look of shock and delight on their face.
When I went to a hotel in Brazil with my mum, we were sitting outside in this beautiful hotel, temperature dropped, and then within a few seconds they were there with a blanket. My mum still talks about that today. It cost the hotel nothing other than, yes, somebody's training to look out for those kind of things.
What can you do to really make them think, wow, I have not had that before, and I did not expect that? My name is Jack Thomas. I'm one of the co-founders of The Fit Guide, which is the global standard of fitness excellence. Welcome to the 5-Star Fitness Podcast. This show is all about bringing the very best from hospitality into the fitness industry so we can have better, more profitable businesses and, importantly, positively impact more people's lives. I'm joined today by Matthew Lavender, who's co-founder at The Fit Guide. Welcome, Matt. And today we are digging into Mind the Gap, and particularly the A. So we have GAP. The A stands for Anticipatory Service. And these principles, this Mind the Gap philosophy, is really what will help your gym, your facility become 5-star in that top 1 or 2%. The last few episodes, I've certainly learned a lot, so do go back and watch those if you haven't already. Today we're digging into Anticipatory Service. First of all, what is that?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of different ways you could define it, but the way I like to talk about it when I'm training hotels, restaurants, spas, is that anticipatory service is being one step ahead of your guests, your clients, your members. It's knowing what they want before they even have to tell you. And it could just be as simple as offering an additional piece of information or an additional piece of or additional service. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what it is. I think once we start to talk about some examples, it will become a lot more clear for the audience.
Yeah, and as I always say, I'm thinking about how we can apply this in the fitness industry, and so I'm kind of thinking ahead. And I think if you haven't listened to the last few episodes, do go back, because it really sets the scene on how you can deliver anticipatory service, because we talk about observing the client, asking the right questions, active listening, and that sets the tone of the environment to actually be able to do this, I think. Can you give us some examples in hospitality? Either you stayed at many of the world's best hotels, not just trained them, but stayed there, done many anonymous evaluations. Can you think of any particularly good examples? Maybe some stories of times when you've been delivered fantastic service?
Yeah, I think you just touched on it, but I think the key to this, if you've done the G, the genuine interest, if you've asked the right questions, you've observed guests, and you've used active listening, there should be lots of things that you can do. And so a really simple one is just offering a guest an umbrella if they're going out, if it's raining. You see a guest in the lobby. Observation, oh, hold on, it's raining outside. They're not carrying an umbrella, so you would offer them one. And the key thing is, it's the thought that counts, right? Yeah. So if probably given 30 seconds later, they would have walked to the door, looked outside, oh, it's raining, and then come back and said, oh, you don't have an umbrella, do you? And you give them the umbrella. What made that interaction so much better was the fact that you just did it before they had to ask you. So I mean, that would be a really simple one. One I really like, and I like to give examples that don't really cost anything, because I think a lot of hotels, they think when it comes to anticipatory service, they have to be offering things which cost money, gifts and things like that. But actually, the best things don't cost anything. So I mean, a really simple one in hospitality is if a doorman or bellman was going up to the room to collect the luggage when the guest is checking out, as they're collecting it, just say, just checking with you, have you remembered all your charges? Yeah. It's such a simple one, but the guests will really appreciate it if they have remembered all their charges. Great. If they haven't, they'll really appreciate it. It saves everybody a lot of time and effort as well. Nobody wants to, in housekeeping, wants to have to be like sort of packaging up people's charges and posting it out to them. And the guests will probably think, oh, it's not worth it. I'll just have to buy another one at the airport. So sometimes it's those little simple, thoughtful things, I think, which are quite good. I mean, a very personal example, and this is one that I've told a million times, but I still think it's got a lot of power. Is when I went to a hotel in Brazil with my mum, and it was the first time I'd ever taken her on a trip. As a hotel inspector, you can sometimes take people, and she kept asking me, when are you taking me?
My holiday?
Yeah, exactly. And so we were sitting outside in this beautiful hotel, It was at the foot of the Iguazu Falls. Temperature dropped just a little bit, and she shivered. Staff members somewhere used their skills of observation, noticed this, maybe they were doing what I said and taking a step back and really observing. And then within a few seconds, they were there with a blanket. My mum still talks about that today. It costs the hotel nothing other than somebody's training to look out for those kind of things.
Wasn't it a cashmere blanket as well?
Yeah, pashmina or cashmere, depending on what day of the week it is. I'll probably
Okay.
make something.
Okay, how the other half live, right?
Yeah, right.
So. When you're telling me that, it's interesting because I think people underestimate the disproportionately powerful impact that has. And, if you go to a normal sort of hostel or a lower end or mid-range hotel, you're not really going to get anything like that. And I think sometimes as service staff, we often underestimate just how powerful it is when someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, sir, it's raining outside. I see you haven't got an umbrella." You think it's a small thing, but people are a bit taken aback. And, I like this idea of trying to delight people. We talk about that at our gym. How can you delight customers? And it's just this idea that you don't just deliver the standard service, you delight them by going above and beyond. And I think as, gym owners or service staff, front desk coaches, what can you do to really make them think, wow, I have not had that before, and I did not expect that. Any other good examples in hospitality, or perhaps any other things that gyms might be able to do that are front of mind?
Yeah, so again, I think it's often the simplest things which have the biggest impact. We have a concept which is called the +1. So that's if somebody asks you for a piece of information or a particular service, you think, what can I do +1 as well as that? So it could be something simple as somebody calls down to reception to say, could you send up some shampoo to the room? And you just think, well, what is the obvious +1? You send them the shampoo plus some conditioner. Often looking for those combination relationships. Or somebody asks for a piece of information. They might say, for example, could you check if there is availability at the restaurant tonight? You could just check and say, yes, I can confirm there's plenty of availability. Or you could say, yes, there's availability. We open at 7. Can I make you a reservation? So it's just adding one extra thing, that +1, to something that they've asked for. So there's loads of examples you could do. I mean, I think in sort of future episodes we'll go on to some of the more wild and wonderful things. But I think it is important to remember that, it doesn't have to be crazily expensive or complicated. It really genuinely is the thought that counts.
Yeah, I think an obvious one, I think I've talked about this before in a previous episode, but an obvious one for me, which is just quite easy for everyone to do, and I don't think I've ever had this in a gym myself, is, well, if you give free towels, of course, if you charge, it's a little bit difficult, but if you do give a free workout towel, as we do at our gym and our facility, if you see someone who's sweating a lot, maybe they're using their shirt to sort of wipe their brow, maybe they didn't know there were free workout towels, if you just run over and say, okay, here we go, sir, here we go, madam, here's a towel. Again, just the absolute look of shock and delight on their face. So that's just the one that I say, or one of a few different ones that I really ask our team to look out for, because again, it's just not something that's really happening in the fitness industry, and of course it is happening at the very best hotels. Any other little ones that kind of stick out for gyms that might be obvious?
Yeah, so I mean, I was lucky enough to do quite a few trial evaluations, as did you, Jack, when we were sort of testing our standards. And some of the ones that really stuck out for me, again, they're mostly quite simple, but I remember arriving at one particular fitness club and I was flying later that day, so I actually had my luggage with me. They noticed, again, observation, and the first thing they said, I see you've got your luggage with you, we can store that for you out the back. I was at another where they asked me, did you drive? This was in Dubai, and I think a lot of the clubs there, people would drive, as people do, and so they said, look, do you need your parking ticket validated? We've got free parking if you've done a class, but preempting that, you can imagine a lot of people having to go up to them and say, could you stamp the ticket? But it's just that difference between offering it before they had to ask. I've had others where they've made a note of my smoothie preference and then sort of had that waiting for me before I left.
Time maybe,
yeah, exactly.
Leave on the client.
Yeah, so we can really start to talk about some of the things that go a bit above and beyond. So yeah, there are plenty of things. I think that the important thing is that do something that is appropriate for that client, that member. in the moment. And if you have that mindset where you are listening to them, you are asking questions, you are using your skills of observation, things should start to come naturally. And once you get into the habit of it, you'll see that there's always something that you could do.
Yeah, I really love how these hospitality concepts link into each other, right? So,
Yes.
as you said, if you ask questions, you listen, you observe, then you're in a position to give anticipatory service. And it links in quite nicely to a concept that we've talked about at our gym, which is like building this member profile, right? Do they have any injuries? You know, do they live near? Do they live far? Do they like to be coached? You know, in a very sort of hands-on way or hands-off. And again, if you can share that information with other members of staff as well, it puts them in a good position to really go above and beyond and deliver this kind of service. Any other sort of final tips or little things that people can look out for?
Yeah, I think you could sort of gamify this a little bit. You can make it a challenge for your team members. You know, you say to them, let's see if we can come up with some creative ideas. You know, again, we'll probably talk about some of the more wacky and wonderful things. But just what did you find that was anticipatory? Did you find a +1? You know, what were you able to do that just sort of that made you be one step ahead of that particular member? You know, what were you able to do before somebody had to ask you? And then share ideas. I think that's the thing. You know, because once you start coming up with ideas, of course you can reuse them. You know, yes, you want these ideas to be unique from one person to another, but you know, you'll start to realize that, okay, if we see someone with luggage, let's offer to store it.
Yeah.
If we see someone that's driving, offer them their parking ticket stamp in advance. So challenge people, share them, celebrate them, and just, again, as we've said loads of times before, get people into this mindset, this mind the gap mindset.
I love it. That's really reminded me of something that I think I learned from you through going through this process and seeing some of your slides and you telling me about what you do with hotels is asking our customer service and operations team, so it's essentially our front desk team, we call them CSO, customer service and operations, and asking them every month at our monthly team meeting, how this month have you delighted customers? One little example. And often, you know, one or two of them have got a little story like this and we can share it and we can talk about the impact that that's had. Say next month we'll be asking the same questions. So let's think of some ways that we can really delight our members, really go above and beyond. So yeah, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, bring it into your next team meeting. Maybe give them a heads up, maybe introduce the concept at this meeting and say, look, next month I really want to hear some stories of how we've done this. How have we gone above and beyond? How have we anticipated clients' needs? How have we absolutely delighted them? And that's a great way to really get them in the right mindset and really use the stories from the rest of the team to inspire everyone else. That's awesome, Matthew. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Next time we're going to be going deeper into this idea of anticipatory service and talking about unreasonable hospitality, really going above and beyond. And I'm really excited for that one. So do tune into the next episode. If you think we need to be bringing in more elements from hospitality into the fitness industry to make it better, do subscribe to this show. Do watch our weekly episodes. For now, we'll catch you next time.